Well, hello, hello. I am so excited for this really special interview today. I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Chris SD, the founder of Sync Songwriter and widely recognized as the absolute go-to expert for independent artists looking to get their music placed in TV and in film and advertising and all the rest of that. We're going to learn a lot today, so stay tuned. Chris has helped countless indie songwriters land placements in top shows, movies, ads, all of the above. I think one of the most recent successes actually includes connecting two musicians directly with the music supervisor for the film Anora and resulting in five song placements in this multi-Oscar winning movie. Congratulations, Chris. I think Chris really brings a rare combination of creative credibility and industry success. He began his career as an award-winning music producer, earning 5 Juno Awards and 7 additional nominations, including Engineer of the Year. Oh my gosh. He's also a voting member of the Recording Academy, and his work and insights have been featured on Music Tech and Muse and Music Connection magazine and so many more, Modern Music Marketing. I could go on, and Authority magazine. I think what truly sets Chris apart is this. He doesn't just teach artists how to, use Sync Works. He actually introduces them to the music supervisors. And I know from being in business myself, it's really important for us to have that connection. And I'm so grateful that you're doing that. So please give a warm round of applause to my beautiful special guest today, Chris. Welcome, Chris. I'm so excited to dive in.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me today, Gloria. This is very, very awesome to be in your program here.
Yeah, thank you. I know we've got a big event coming up. We're going to be talking about that. But first, let's talk a little bit about your journey into Sync. I mean, you started as an award-winning producer and engineer. What was maybe the moment that you realized that one great Sync placement could completely change an artist's career and income for that matter?
Yeah, so going back, I mean, when I was working in the studio, I had the good fortune of working with, major label artists and indie artists as well. A lot of indie artists that I work with had music that was just as good as the majors, but they didn't have all of the things behind. They didn't have the managers, the agents, pushing, helping them get their music out there. And so it was, trying to think of a way to get them more exposure. That's literally how I got into licensing. I was trying to think of how can indie artists get their music out there in a bigger way than just, jumping in a van and, putting posters on poles or hopping on their social or doing whatever it was that they were, how they were trying to promote their record. So I started hearing about this licensing thing when it started to become this cool thing to do. Before that, nobody really wanted to be in some syndicated cable show that they knew that they didn't watch. None of their fans would watch it, and it felt like selling out, right? A lot of musicians used to look at it that way. And then when Netflix came along and a lot of sort of these new other streaming platforms, there were much more sort of a diversity and many different kinds of cool shows and so on. People thought, oh man, this is great. I can actually get into something that I actually like. So it started to become a thing. So it was right around that time. And I started hearing these musicians were like, I paid my rent for a year, I got from one Sync placement, or I got all of this exposure, and that was the part that really grabbed my ear was the exposure. It was, not just the money. The money can be fantastic. You can get paid up to, thousands of dollars for one Sync placement, and then the back end royalties. But it was the fact that you can kind of ride on the coattails of these movie studios and TV studios. You've got your music being placed potentially in front of millions of, viewers. And even if a fraction of them are Shazamming your song or looking you up on Google or with AI or something to figure out who you are, that's an incredible number of new fans. And so I've worked with songwriters who have ended up in Billboard magazine. They've had festivals calling them. Their Spotify spins went off the charts and stuff from, everybody hitting their songs and stuff like that. So it's this incredible vehicle for exposure. And that's sort of the nutshell of how I got into Sync licensing.
Yeah. Wow. You made me smile when you were talking about artists originally, driving down the road and just kind of putting stickers on poles and hoping for the best. It just reminds me, my husband Ray, when he was on tour, this is back in the day, and that's what you had to do, that you didn't have a whole lot of options. And you've really discovered why sync is a game changer for indie artists. I think many independent musicians, they're still, chasing streams alone, and there's so much more in the business. And, in your experience, what makes sort of the TV and film sync licensing maybe one of the smartest paths to attain sustainable income today?
Yeah, so let me answer this in two parts. So the first thing, kind of hearkening just a few words back when you were talking about chasing streams, is the important thing to remember nowadays is that everybody and their dog has a record out.
Yes.
Like everyone's got a
Yes.
record out,
Yes.
And so you could probably pull your extended family, and there's probably someone who also has an album up on SoundCloud or on Spotify
Yeah.
or some music out there. So you're competing against this ocean of music, right? Millions of songwriters who then have millions and millions of tracks, all looking for listeners, all chasing spins, all trying to streams or however you want to
Yeah.
say it, really going after as much as they can within the limits of what they've got. And it's this kind of irony that, we can have a computer connected to the world, right? Through one connection. And you can literally access anybody else who's connected.
Yeah.
And we view that as being like, wow, this is so liberating and stuff. But it creates this like starvation of plenty or something,
Mhm.
It's like there's so many people that are connected that you can't get the attention. So
Right.
that is the key to sync licensing. And that's why I think it is such a smart, wise move to pursue, because getting your music, it doesn't matter how old you are, where you come from, what kind of music that you write, where you live, whatever. None of that matters. It only comes down to the song.
Mhm.
And that's what the industry is looking for. So when people are thinking like, well, how do I get my music out there in a big way? You've got to figure out, the first question you should be asking yourself is, how do I break out of the noise? Because everybody's in it, this ocean of, just imagine all these lifeboats floating on an ocean, hoping one boat in the ocean comes by them, within sight of them, kind of thing. So got to think, how do I get noticed and how do I do that, And licensing is the way to achieve that. Now, getting your music heard by the right people in music licensing is extremely hard. Everybody would be doing it. Otherwise, if you could do it, everyone's trying, but the success rate is like very, very, very low, because everyone's sending emails out, or they're in libraries or agencies, like a sync agency or a music library, when they're basically a needle in a haystack, again, same problem. But if you can connect directly to the people in the industry, in TV and film, that can make it happen for you and connect to the right people,
Yes.
everything changes. And that's kind of what I do. I specialize in introducing indie songwriters directly to music supervisors. Those are the people who are hired by the actual studios, the directors and the producers, to find music for the productions. So I connect indie songwriters with music supervisors so that they can form their own relationships with them, skip over the middlemen, and go straight to the source, kind of thing.
Wow. That is like a gold mine right there. I mean, I think since we're talking about, what artists actually need to get music into TV and film, obviously they need the connection and someone who's been there, done that, and get them there faster. And I think too, because when you're making that connection, the person you're connecting them with realizes, okay, this is coming from Chris. This is going to be a legit contact. And so people want to work with them because they know it's coming through you. There's that connection that's worth a lot. And I think maybe just to clear up some confusion from your perspective, what are the absolute non-negotiables an artist must have in place before their music is ready for sync opportunities?
Yeah. So the first one, obviously, you have to be able to write songs.
Yeah.
If you're not there yet, you need to go learn how to do that and get better at your songwriting craft.
Yeah.
The recording and the production has to be above the bar to get into TV and film. And that's not like sounding like the next Adele record if she ever puts one out.
Yeah.
It just has to sound as good as everything else getting into TV and film. But the thing is, the production and the recording is actually the easy part. The hard part's the songwriting. Because if you have a great song, there's 1,000 ways you can do it, you know? And it doesn't have to sound brilliant. It just has to sound, like I said, above the bar. It has to sound good enough. So it's really about your songwriting talent. And then, but you still have to have a recording, right? So that's a non-negotiable. You got to have that in place. And you have to have at least one recording. People ask me, how many songs do I need? It's like, there are people who have one song who can get it placed over and over and over and over again, you know, going way back to the very beginning of sort of independent music and getting licensed. Moby, if you remember that name,
Yes.
he was the one who broke the doors open for independent music in licensing. He had that one record, Play, right? I think it was called. And I don't know how many songs were on it. Probably the usual, 10, 12.
Yeah.
He made millions of dollars from that record in TV and film. It's crazy. And it was just those 10 songs or whatever that got licensed over and over and over and over. So you don't need to have 100 songs.
Yeah.
And so those are really the that's all you actually have to be ready for TV and film. It's a very simple process. The biggest challenge, like I said earlier, is getting heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I just, it kind of gives me shivers because I just know the opportunities are out there. When you think sometimes musicians just think, oh, I'm just playing these gigs and I write a couple of songs, like this is just opening up this massive opportunity to not say you don't just have to play for like $100 a gig. Like there's an opportunity here to share your craft. And I think inside the mind of a music supervisor, so we're going to go there now, this is the question I think everybody wants answered. When a music supervisor is choosing songs, what are they truly listening for, like beyond, oh, that's a good song, but what is sort of their take on that?
Right. So the interesting thing about that is, let's start with perhaps the vision that musicians might have about getting into music, into TV and film like that, the how-to do that.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that you need to watch what's working in TV and film, pick something, and then write for the show or write for the movie that you heard is coming out, right? That's going to be a sequel to another one or something. And that you need to learn how to write for TV and film. And that couldn't be further from the truth. There are people who actually do that. There's a tiny minority of people who are really good at that. And they are hired, to pump out all kinds of music, right? And they stick to their genius zone, though. They usually do what they're good at. And they can be successful. They have to be prolific. They're usually producers. They are excellent writers. They often work as a team. It's a whole thing, where they have usually an agent or something that helps them push that out there. But it's very, very, very difficult to do because you have to have a great reputation already. You have to be prolific all the time to do that. By far, most of the independent music that gets into TV and film is from indie singer-songwriters who write from their heart. They write the things that they know. They write, for the people, the issues, the feelings, whatever, the normal stuff that a songwriter writes from, coming from their heart and soul. That's the stuff that gets put into TV and film. So a lot of people say, well, how does that work? Because I might write my own thing. So how do they make that fit? They just shoehorn it in there? No. There's so many opportunities out there that what they do is they take your music and then find something that it will fit in, like depending on the project that they're working on, and you can do the same thing. You can say, hey, here's my record, and I can target it to these specific kinds of shows. I show indie songwriters how to do that. As one example, there was you can even use old music, there was a guy who used music he recorded in the 80s. So he's probably in his 60s, at least, right? Maybe 70s. And he did this year, a songwriter I helped, and he got into a Martin Scorsese produced film, just old 80s tracks, He found the home for it. And that's the key, right? So that's, yeah.
That's exciting. And I think too, we love all the different genres, and like the music makes the movie. I mean, can you imagine even watching any movie, no music at all? Like it just wouldn't work. I think we as musicians are the ones that are creating these fantastic movies. It's the music. I'm curious about the top reasons songs get maybe passed over. Like, what are the most common mistakes that you see indie artists make that maybe quietly prevent music from ever being chosen if the song itself is strong? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So there are a few obvious ones. There's a number of other things. I don't have time to get into it on this call, but so a few of the obvious ones are, you know, as I said before, the production, right, is an
Yeah.
obvious one. So if it's just below the production level, again, easy to fix. If you're learning how to produce music or record at home, just learn. But as you're learning, hire out somebody to kind of mix your songs for you or whatever. And then you can, follow along, like just say, hey, can you send me the session and show me what you did? And, take a course or whatever, learn how to do it as you're doing it. Because you don't want to waste your great songs on mediocre
Right.
production, right?
Right.
So that's the thing. And when you get good enough, then you just take over and do it all yourself. So that's like, sort of number one. Another sort of big one that's really kind of obvious, but not a lot of people, recognize it, is if a song is too specific, meaning that if you write a song about Sally, then it's super difficult to place the song unless there's a character or some reference to Sally, right? In the
Yes.
show, or somebody will write it about New Orleans or just something super specific. And
Right.
so it doesn't mean dumbing your songs down, doesn't mean, you have to have universal lyrics all the time or anything. It just means paying attention
Yes.
you want a lot of people to be able to relate to your song,
Yeah.
and that's really sort of one of the big keys. Another one would be if the mix is a little bit distracting. That's a big one. So if you're an avant-garde artist and you're like, man, this is my thing, I'm cutting edge and everything, that's great. You can still find a spot for your music because there's, like I said, almost every song can get placed in TV and film somewhere.
Yeah.
But there's a degree of distraction that supervisors pay attention to where they never want the viewer, when they're watching the show or the movie, the ad, to be thinking about the music. They want them to feel the music and they want them to hear it, but they don't want to be them to be distracted by something. So if you put like a sound effect of like rain in your, in there, or you've got like a beat that just, there's this little thing that pops out, who knows, boing, something like that, it's going to be something that's going to distract. So they tend to steer away from those kinds of things, but that's usually extreme stuff, honestly.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you said that. My husband was a musician and, recording artist. And I remember when he was taking one of his songs that he wrote to the producer, and the producer said, okay, well, can you just change these two words? Because he actually wrote the song about me. And he said long blonde hair and blue eyes. And then they had him change it to and long hair and sparkling eyes. And he was kind of fighting with it for a minute because he said, well, yeah, but, that was for my wife. And I said, well, I know it's for me, but that's okay because they said many more people are going to relate to that
Yeah.
because you're just saying long hair, sparkling, whatever it was. So I
Yeah.
think it's really true. You have to really think about the longevity of it not being so specific to, one person. Sometimes that's how songwriters do, right? They're feeling something in a relationship and I'm going to write the song for this guy or this girl. So when we
Yeah.
kind of look back, I think that is really powerful.
But that's fine, right? That's fine. You don't have to have every song for sync licensing, right?
Yeah.
You as an artist, I always encourage people, just write it the way you want to write it, but
Yeah.
pay attention when you can do something that you just described, where you can change it easily.
Yes.
And it's not going to betray the song. Never
Right.
betray your art. Like never think that, I'm going to try to shape it, because intellectually for what they're looking for. It inevitably fails because the reason that they want your music, the reason most indie music that gets into TV and film is kind of songwriter driven, artist driven music,
Yeah.
is because there's an authenticity to it.
Right.
It doesn't sound like it's trying to be something. It sounds literally like the thing it is. And that is going to move the audience who's watching the show or the movie, the ad. That's really the key there.
Yeah. I love listening to the music tracks like in movies because they do make you, they can make you scared or they can make you fall in love or, there's so many opportunities. I think when we look back and if we're just thinking for a minute about, libraries and agents or direct to music supervisors, I mean, this is a big one. should artists be focusing on music libraries, agents, or trying to connect directly with music supervisors? Like, how can you help artists navigate? Because I think this is an important decision strategically, because if you're an artist, why would you not take advantage of what you're offering so that I can be the creator and then you can help me get the next step to actually monetizing my craft? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So there's really four paths that you can take to try to get your music into TV and film. One is by far the worst one, is emailing music supervisors directly.
Right.
They get inundated with emails from all kinds of people, not just independent musicians. Every day, hundreds of emails come in from publishers and labels and, music libraries and agencies. So that's just never going to work, kind of thing, unless they know you or something like that. Now, the next sort of two ways you can do it are, as I touched on earlier, you can have a sync agent, which is someone who signs you or signs your songs and says, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to pitch this to music supervisors because I have relationships with them.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, ooh, that's good. Then you don't have to do any of that kind of stuff that you might hate doing, A lot of people think you got to be extroverted to do this or something. No, that you do not. You just need to be yourself, and that's it. But when you sort of go through a middle person like that, what happens is that, well, one, they take about half your money on average for it. But then still, you might think, you know what? At least I'm getting placed, and I'll take half, and that's good. And then across the aisle from that is music libraries, where you can literally upload your music into a music library, and music supervisors sometimes go to these libraries, some more than others. Like if their studio has a deal with a library, then they get all their music from there, kind of thing. And you might think, well, that's great. It'll be in the library. I don't have to do any work, and then they'll just find my song. Both of those scenarios we need those. We need libraries and we need agencies, because when the industry needs music that's curated or whatever, and they need it from some place they can get it that they're familiar with, they can always find music there. And that's great. The person who owns the library or the agent, it's great for them too, because they always get the sync placement, right? Even if it's not your song, it's going to be someone else's song. They'll have something that the supervisor might want, kind of thing. Where it's disastrous is for an indie songwriter, because you're essentially, like I said earlier, you're in there with everybody else, right? Yeah. Hundreds of thousands to millions of other tracks. So you're literally just playing a lottery. Your tracks are generally sitting in there collecting dust, and you can test this. You can ask all your musician friends how many of them ever gotten sync placements out of a library or a sync agent. Mm-hmm. And you might get I did, back in 2017, I got a one-off, Yeah. Everyone else is going to be a big fat zero, right? And nothing happens. So that is the huge challenge. So you're back at square one, right? You're just like, well, then my music how's it ever going to get out there? I can't get a label deal, can't get it on TV and film. So hopefully I can make a viral video with cats. It's like, is that my best hope for my music dreams for my life? The fourth and way that I took, by far the best way, is connecting directly to the people who put music into TV and film. Yeah. It is the hardest way because, like I said, and the first one, you can't email them, you can't call them, you can't bug them on LinkedIn or something like that. They'll just blacklist you. Yep. So you need to find a way to connect. And that's exactly why I set up Sync Songwriter, was to connect artists directly with the supervisor. So I'm not a middleman. Yeah. I don't sit there and take a cut of the music every sync and that they're not behind me, meaning that, when you're in a library with an agency, the supervisor never gets to know who you are. Your name might be on the track and the metadata, but they're talking to the agent, or they're friends with the library. They're the ones getting the credit for it. Mm-hmm. So you want to have your own relationships, and that's how you get consistent sync placements, like over and over and over again, because when the supervisor knows who you are and they love your music and they know what you do and you're good at it, they can keep coming back to you. And that's how at Sync Songwriter we get so many placements in all the big shows, Grey's Anatomy and SWAT and Netflix trailers, and the Anora, biggest movie of the year, happened this year. Like we get all kinds of big placements because of the relationships. It's about who you know. It doesn't have to be a dirty word, but it can be perfectly natural. and a normal relationship, but it's about who you know.
Wow. It makes me want to just go write a song right now.
Do it.
Okay, I'm just going to go do it. I'm just going to go write something. I think the power too of direct introductions, one thing that makes Sync Songwriter unique is that you actually introduce artists directly to music supervisors. So, I mean, and first of all, thank you for even offering this incredible service. And you've got this great free, masterclass webinar coming up. We're going to be talking about that in a second. If you're a musician, my gosh, do not miss this event. It's going to be so incredible. Why is that access so powerful? How does it change the results that artists get when they can work directly with you, Chris?
Well, what it comes down to is, being able to connect with people who are at the top of the industry, who are closed. They have to remain closed. They can only send out briefs and requests and respond to their go-to people. Yeah. They don't have the bandwidth. I mean, none of us would, to be able to, if somebody said, I want you to read every email that someone sent in today, and everyone's after you because you're the one placing it, and you got to find a song in those, who knows? And then there's all the other problem is that they don't trust indie songwriters right out of the gate, because people might have hidden samples in there that they're like, oh, I thought it was okay to use. I mean, that's a job-ending mistake, right, for a supervisor. What happens if you're, let's pick on, I don't know, let's say bass players today. I always pick on a different instrument. A bass player in your band, right, comes out of the woodwork and says, oh, wait, I was in the room when you wrote that, and I think I wrote that part the way I remembered I did, and I want a piece of this, and you can't put it in the movie. It's already in the film. We're going to release it. Sorry, no, we're going to court. All kinds of nightmare scenarios like that. Yeah. So it's about going through someone like myself. I've got these the trust and the connections with them, and like I said earlier, I'm not a middleman. I want to help indie songwriters. I want to, just like those indie songwriters I work with in the studio, I want their music to see the light of day. I want it to happen for them. And so that's really what I do, is I connect the indie songwriters directly with the supervisors so that there's something real there. It's not just you're not just like a commodity or a track number, where you can actually get your foot in the door into this closed club, essentially, is what it is, and that's how we do it.
Wow. It's incredible. I mean, congratulations, on all the massive success that you have had and continue to have. And also thank you, on behalf of all the musicians who are now oh, there's an opportunity. 2026 is opening up a whole new door, and you've had real world results, for so many musicians. You've seen artists go from unknown to getting major placements. Maybe what's one story that stands out to you that shows what's possible, when the right song meets the right opportunity?
Sure. I got a lot of them. Pick one. Let's talk about Girly. All right. So a woman sent a song to me. She goes by Girly, and she had it just recorded on her smartphone or whatever. And she's like, I really want to get this placed, this song. And I was like, well, it's a good song, right? But the recording was just super demo, whatever. And I am a music producer still. I have an online studio. And I said, look, I'll help you produce this for you, and we'll produce a track. And then we're going to, I'm going to help connect you with these supervisors. And that's what we did. Yeah. And she ended up getting 4 placements,
wow,
pretty rapidly. Yeah. And so that was super, super exciting, obviously, for her. And that was one song sent to me from a smartphone. So that, it's not rocket science. It's it's a very straight ahead process. Even the contracts that you sign are super simple. You're not giving away your copyright to your song. You're just licensing it to them for a specific use, and that's it. And they pay you for that, often in the thousands of dollars. You can get the back-end royalties every time the show airs or whatever. You get the royalties from your PRO, right? And it's a fantastic, fantastic thing. And everybody wants to do it. But there's only a finite number of placements. So you need to figure out how to get your foot in the door to actually meet these people directly so that you can do that. So that's what it's all about. And it worked for Girly, obviously.
Yeah. Wow. Congratulations. I'm so excited for what's happening on January the 11th. It's coming up. It's on Sunday, January the 11th. You're hosting a free live event with five top music supervisors. Can you share, what artists will discover at this event, or what they usually never get to hear?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's all kinds of, different conferences around the world, really.
Yes.
There's a lot in LA and New York if you live in the US and stuff, Toronto and Canada and in Europe and everything, where music supervisors will go out to them and you can sit and, we'll go to a panel or learn from people in the industry kind of thing. So, well, one, you got to pay to go there. You got to pay to stay there while you're doing the whole thing. So it always costs money. And then the other big problem is that even if you go to a panel and you think like, okay, I'm going to learn about sync licensing, and then I'm going to meet some of these supervisors after they're done. I'm going to stand in line.
Yeah.
So, people, I mean, I did that way, way, way back when I was first learning, The problem is that you're in a lineup of like, 20 to 40 people or whatever, so waiting your turn to shake their hand and say something. You might have a download card for your music. And then you finally get to them and they shake their hand and they're happy to meet you. I mean, they're happy to be there. Their music supervisors are music people, right? They're just like you and I. They often either play music or we're in bands or whatever. So they're cool. They're a cool hang.
Yeah.
So they meet you, want to meet you, they want to talk to you, and you give them a download card, and they're like, "Oh, I'd love to hear your stuff. It's great." And into the bag it goes, right?
Yeah.
And then the next person. Okay, end of the panel. Time to get something to eat. Well, I got to go back to my hotel room and drop this bag off. And then they go out and they eat, and then they go hang out at after party, and they go back to the hotel. What do you think happens with the bag? Like, they might have the best intentions, but most often they're not. They might bring it home. They might go through it. Probably not, because they're just like, they just got all these people who want sync placements, let alone their inbox is full of people, right? So, they're doing their job by going to the conference and doing that. So I don't want to paint a big broad brush. Some of them might do this, but we're all human. Most humans generally would not do that in that circumstance. So what I thought was much more important and a much better way to sort of do this, like give indie songwriters an avenue, give them a pathway into the industry, was to have a similar panel, but not only with top music supervisors, but also ones who are focused on indie music. People I work with every day, all the time. Yeah. And people like, from Grey's Anatomy and people from the Anora movie, and the list goes on, right? Yeah. So I invite 5 of them out. I know a ton of them. I invite 5 out for this actual, panel. It's virtual. It's all online. Yeah. It's completely free. You don't have to go anywhere. You just log online and show up. It's a very popular panel, but we talk about basically, how much you can get paid with indie music, why the supervisors love working with indie music, what indie music they're looking for now, why they support indie music. Like, basically you're getting all the behind the scenes stuff about why they love and use independent music so that you can get your ducks in a row. Yeah. And lastly, and the most important part, is that at the panel, I actually show people how I can connect them directly to those music supervisors and lots more. So that we only do this once a year, and every year it's, we have a ton of people that come out to this, and we, go through this whole process once a year. And so, yeah, it's always an amazing event.
Yeah, I can't wait. I've already signed up. So speaking of signing up, here is why this event is a must attend for artists. And so if you're on the fence, Chris, what would you say to someone who's wondering, well, if this event is really for them, what are your thoughts?
Well, if you had to pay money or you got something important going on or whatever, then yeah, you should definitely weigh that. But if it's completely free, and it's and if you're trying to get your music out there, and this is like a proven thing that happens, why not? Yeah. I mean, it's only an hour long. So you just come out. You can always turn your computer off and go do whatever you want to do if you don't like it. But I mean, it's a kind of a no-brainer. If you really, really have a dream, that's what the panel's for. It's for people who have a dream. Like, I'm not an elitist. I don't look at people like, oh, you're good enough and you're not good enough. Yes. I mean, the story of Gurley is a perfect example. I want people who believe in themselves, who really want it, because you know what? those are the people who end up making it in life,
Yes.
And you don't, no one starts off like talented. We all have to learn. We all have to,
Hmm.
some people might have a little bit extra, learn to eat more easily than others or whatever. It still comes down to the songwriting. So if you
100%.
have that dream and you really want to get your music into TV and film, which is really a cover word, right? For
Yeah.
get your music out into the world in a massive way and be recognized for the songwriter you are,
Hmm.
come out to the panel.
100%. Don't miss it. I think it's the ripple effect of sync placement. I mean, when a song gets placed, artists don't just get paid, they get fans, they get downloads, it's long-term royalties, it's connections. This kind of thing, this kind of exposure can change the trajectory of an artist's career. And I really invite people to say, hey, let's do this thing. Chris, what are your final words of wisdom for indie artists? Because we want to make sure that we're going to fill the house and it's going to be an amazing, amazing event. I can't wait.
Yeah, I really think that it's important to at first ignore everything that we've just talked about. Just ignore it for a second and look inward. Look into your heart, your soul as an indie songwriter.
Yeah.
And ask yourself, why do you write music? What do you want out of writing music? I know one person in my whole life. I knew one person who didn't like putting their songs out. He used to write them and metaphorically crumple them up and throw them to the fish.
Yeah.
That was his thing. It was just kind of like, I like writing songs, and he was good too.
Yeah.
But he had no desire to communicate. But all other musicians want to get their music out there because music is a language.
Yes.
It's a communication. It's how you express yourself. You want to reach other people, to appreciate your message, to listen and understand what you're trying to say. And that is the motivation. And I think, even artists who you think, oh, they're just driven by fame or money or whatever, it's like deep down inside, it came down to wanting to be heard, to wanting to for people to acknowledge their message, and who they are and what they have to say. And so if you're that person and you're looking inwardly and saying, I have something that I want other people to hear, then now pay attention to everything we just said and think about how to take it from that vision that you're having, inward vision, to the stage of the world, right? And if you don't want to actually get on a huge stage in front of 10,000 people or whatever, you don't have to in sync licensing. Doesn't matter how old you are, where you come from, or anything. It literally just comes down to your songs. You can be as private or as public with it as you want. It has spawned countless artists who have had their big break just through sync placements. And then there's a bunch of other people who are like live in a shack and make lots of money doing it and have a private life. So it's a beautiful, beautiful way to communicate your music to the world.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, thank you so much, Chris. Before we wrap up, I just want to remind everyone that this is an exclusive live event. It's completely free. It's for independent artists and songwriters. It's happening Sunday, January the 11th, 2026, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Those of you in the middle can figure it out. You're going to meet Chris and 5 top music supervisors. There's real opportunities and insight here. This is a very rare chance. It's happening just once in 2026, and see how the decisions are actually made for film and TV. So I can't wait to see you there, Chris, and we're going to put the link in the bio. Thank you so much, Chris. I'm really excited and very grateful for what you're presenting and the opportunities you're creating for all the artists.
Oh, thank you so much, Glory, for having me on here. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll see everybody there. Don't forget, click the link below, get registered. It's free live event. Don't miss it.